Hello everyone. So I have just read the Preludium and chapter 1 of Skywalkers, a Clone Wars story. That's Sky with an E at the end, not the character name Skywalker. I want to make that clear. This is a short novella. As far as I can tell, there's 3 chapters: the Preludium, Interludium, and the Postludium throughout the book as well. So I'm nearly halfway through it in terms of each chapters. Once I get to chapter 2, I'll be pretty much halfway through. But I've just finished the Preludium and chapter 1, so I'm going to give you my review. So the Preludium, I'm just going to call it the prologue for now. It's just going to be easier. We get to see Captain Brisha Shard, and we find out that her ship has been caught in a minefield, and she's needing to launch off some escape pods, and that she's bringing precious cargo that's eventually revealed to be not quite a vaccine to a plague that's going on Marat 5, also known as Sky, by its natives, but not quite a vaccine, but something to postpone the effects of the plague. So however, she can't quite get she can't get the cargo. It gets destroyed, but she's able to launch 2 escape pods. These turn out to include Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker. What was his name? Halogad Ventar? Is it that? Yeah, Halogad Ventar. I'm just going to call him Hal from now on, because that's what Anakin calls him to as well. And also 4, I think it's 4, clone commandos in a Tark squad. And anyway, we get a little bit of background of the mission in the first chapter from a message by Mace Windu, and we get to see the Jedi emerge from the escape pods, and the clones, of course, and we get to see I think this is probably some of the best parts of the book so far, and it's Anakin and Hal's interactions are just so funny. They are hilarious. They are described as being friends, and I do assume it is just cheeky banter between the two. But we really do feel like they're constantly at odds with each other, and they're constantly trying to one-up each other in a very, I guess, if you've ever watched the show Miranda, and you have some of those in that show, you have some scenes where you have Miranda trying to one-up Stevie, and Stevie trying to one-up Miranda. It's like that. Hal and Anakin are constantly trying to one-up each other or get on each other's nerves, and it's hilarious to read. I kept having quite a few good laughs while reading it. But anyway, the leader of the Sky Tree comes over. I can't remember his name now, which is funny because I only just finished reading the chapter. But the leader of the Sky Tree comes over, and he brings them over to there, and they have a bit of a chat. They hang over, the Jedi and the clones pass over their weapons to the Sky Tree, and they make their way over to the Citadel. And we get to see a little bit more into what's been going on. We get to learn about I'm just gonna call it like the underworld or something like that, because that's what it's also described as in the book. I can't remember what it's called. The leader's name is Clarimer. But I'm not going to be remembering it, so I'm just going to be calling him the leader. But we get to learn a bit about the kind of world of Sky, and we also get to learn a little bit about Halagad and his past, and how he joined the Jedi Order even later than Anakin. Anakin joins the Order at 9, which is already pretty old to be becoming a Jedi, and we learn that Hal joined the Order at 17. So we learn that, and I'm not sure if that's been in other in other stories Hal has been in, but this is the only story I've seen Hal in so far. So far, I'm really liking his character. I'm finding it very funny. I'm finding him very funny with Anakin. But we get to learn a little bit about how we also again get to learn a little bit about the culture of the Sky Tree. And we get to learn that there are 3 clans. You got the Lowlands, you got the I think it's the Windborns or Windblowns or something like that. And you also have the Outlanders, and the Outlanders they kind of deviate from the Outlands, sorry, and they kind of deviate from the other 2 clans, and it's not the Windblowers, it's the Highland. But anyway, the Outlanders, the Outland clan, they kind of deviate from the Lowland and the Highland clans. And they're kind of seen as the lowest, class on Sky. But anyway, we then get, we also learn that Zeta Magnus, who is the reason I'm reading this book, because he's literally just Arthur Prime. But anyway, we get to learn that Zeta Magnus has pretty much claimed himself to be the ruler of Sky and the system, and as its Magister. So that again, that's nice. That's a nice little tie-in with to have shortly after reading Plagueis. It hasn't been too long since I've read Plagueis, and if you know that, Plagueis is publicly known as Magister Higo Damask. So that's quite nice to see the return of Magister for this book. So we have Magister Zeta Magnus, or shall we just say Arthur Prime, because let's be honest, it's just Arthur Prime. They share exact same pieces of lore anyway. We learn that he's kind of turned the Outland clan that had sort of came to peace with the other clans. They were still in feud, but they were happy to be with one another. They were content with it, I think that's better to say. But they're still very much with them. They were. It was enough for them to still be ready to betray them, which Zeta Magnus has done, and he's started to release this plague. I don't know why. I don't know whether it's meant to turn them into something else, whether it's just literally just to make them sick. But maybe we'll find out. Hold on. But we eventually get to the Citadel, and we get another funny interaction as they're crossing the bridge between Hal, Anakin, and Obi-Wan, and also what's her name, Helena or Helena, something like that. But anyway, then they get into the Councilor Chamber, and they're able to convince the Council that the Jedi are here to help. That they aren't like Zeta Magnus, who tricked them into thinking he was there to help, only to enslave them. And then we end off the chapter with Zeta Magnus, who is released a public transmission, and referring to the Republic and the Jedi. and we learn he's not very happy that people are on his world. And he's given them 24 hours to pretty much recognise that he's the ruler and to leave. Well, okay, it just says you have, I hence hereby grant your masters 24 standard hours to recognise my sovereign rule, as it says in the book. But he's given those 24 hours, and if they don't, then he will retaliate by sending one of his many different plagues on that's mutagenic to some random Republic world. And that's how we end off the chapter. And if you're wondering why, it is because Zeta Magnus is not why he's doing this. Is why Zeta's doing this. We don't know yet. We don't know why he took over such a remote and secluded world such as Sky. Again, if it's Aether Prime, it makes sense why we go for that. Go for a world where he can just work in peace. But we do know that he's not part of the. We do know though that Zeta Magnus is not part of the Republic, and we do know he's not part of the Separatist Alliance, the Confederacy of what was it, Intergalactic Systems? I think that's what it was called. But yeah, that I've enjoyed this book. The pages are quite small, so the first chapter was 50 pages. So the first chapter and preludium were 50 pages long. But if you put them into like the perspective of into the actual size of the Plagueis novel, it's a bit smaller, then they're only then it's only 16 pages long. It's just because the pages are so small and the text is so big, it goes on for 50 pages, which makes it a lot longer than it is. But oh well. I personally enjoyed it. I'm really liking Hal and Anakin. I'm finding them hilarious. I'm probably just going to continue reading on when I'm ready. I do think though that this is a similar situation to Plagueis. It is, where there is so, I guess, what's the best way to put it? There's a lot in the chapter, but not a whole lot to talk about, if that makes sense. It's a lot of exposition and description of what's going on, rather than packing a bunch of stuff into the chapter. And I think that's fine. This is a novella. There's only 3 chapters: a preludium, interludium, and postludium. So they got to fit what they can. So yeah. But I'm fairly sure it's only 3 chapters. I could be wrong. It's just it's because of how many pages there are. It's difficult to find where each chapter is in the book. But I personally enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to reading more. So thank you all for watching, and goodbye. So I've just finished reading Skywalkers Chapter 2. And hello, forgot to put that in there, but hello. And I've just finished reading Skywalkers Chapter 2. Again, this is another bit of a long chapter, but then again all the chapters are quite long and appear long in this book. It's not actually that long, but they appear long. And we get to see I can't remember the name, and it's also it's a very complicated spelling as well, so I'm not even going to try and pronounce it. The spelling doesn't make sense, but that's what I mean by complicated. Anyway, we get to see Obi-Wan, the Clone Commandos, Clarimere and his daughter Kerry's, also Halagad, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned Obi-Wan and Anakin, didn't I? Making their way through the sky underworld to get to Mount Canitif, where Zeta Magnus is. And we get quite a few interactions in there. Again, this is one of those chapters where there's a lot in it, not a lot to talk about. And we also get to see that a bit of a softer side to Anakin, which I think we often forget Anakin has a softer side. Because it just doesn't seem very much to his character, but he does have that softer side, and we get to see him with Carrie's and how gentle she is. He is, with her. And we also get to see Carrie's and how, even though she's only 13, and she's getting older, of course, she still has that childlike excitement. And it's really sweet to see. We also get more Halagaz and Anakin, which is continues to be hilarious to watch. It really is hilarious, Anakin and Halagaz, because it's such a friendly but toxic friendship they have, and it's really funny to watch. We also find out that these clone commandos were trained by the Sun Guard. One of them, I can't remember the name of the Sun Guards, but we know they were trained by the Sun Guards, which again coming right off Plagueis. That's another thing where it's we've also learned that there have been symptoms in some clone troopers of claustrophobia, which was suggested in the book to be maybe something from Jango Fett's DNA. So we also learned that Jango Fett may have been claustrophobic. We get a bit more background into Halagad's history as well. We learn the pain he has. We know there was something going on in the first chapter, but we didn't go too deep into it. But in this chapter, we get to learn a bit more about him. Then they get to a crystalline cave, and they fight off some pretty much what are just massive crabs that like to eat blood. And unfortunately, Clarimere dies, and Kerry's goes on a rampage on the crab that killed him. I envision them as a crab. They probably aren't crabs, but I envision them that way. And she goes on a rampage, and then Halagad tries to stop her, which also, by the way, it is a long scene, that fight. It is a long scene. About a description of the creature, I'm fairly sure it takes up about a page, maybe half of it, if we're being generous. So, I think it takes up about 3/4 of the page just to describe the creature. If it was on one page, but it's split into 2 pages because, of course, the positioning and all that. But the fight goes on for quite a while with the book. It goes on for quite a few pages. But anyway, once Halagad tries to stop Carys from going all out on the creature that killed her father, and we get to see Anakin getting very frustrated with Halagad for stopping her from bringing herself peace with the justice, putting that in quotes, justice she's trying to bring. We also Captain Nilo, which is one of the clone commandos, threw a Class T detonator, which is apparently illegal, and not Republic, and not part of the Republic artillery. So Obi-Wan right as that fight ended, where Obi-Wan and Halagad and everyone was really struggling to fight and survive, Obi-Wan, instead of being thankful that, hey, Nilo, you just saved me, he's going, that's illegal. You think he'd be more thankful? You think Obi-Wan should be thankful that Nilo saved him, but now he's reprimanding for him using illegal weaponry. But in that situation, in the situation they were in, where they were starting to get overwhelmed. I think they needed to use what things they had there, but again, to each their own. If anyone wants to get angry, okay. I just found it a bit. But anyway, then we find out that the detonator blew open a hole, and they're right under Mount Canitif. They really do go all out with the complicated names in these chapters. We've also got really funny names in this book as well, such as Aragath, or something like that, or Araga. But anyway, we finish. Anyway, Carrie goes to carry her father out from the underworld, so she can bring him to another mountain and bury him. Not bury him. Allow the Skingles, I think they were called, to feast on some of his body parts for some reason. I guess it's just the Sky Tree tradition, but yeah. And so she goes off, and we get to see that she does have a bit of an attachment to Anakin. She wants Anakin to come with her, but yeah, he has to finish off with Zeta Magnus first. But speaking of what's her name, Carrie, I think that's what it was. Trying to bring that justice, Halagad tries to stop her, and we get to see Anakin get very angry at Halagad. We get to kind of look into Anakin's mind and see that fury bringing up, and he's about to draw his lightsaber, so he can make Halagad free Carrie, or Caris, whatever it was, and luckily Halagad stops before Anakin has the chance to do so, which is probably good for Halagad, because in that fight he lost an ear. He lost his right ear, unfortunately, and also it cut off his Padawan braid. So, we get another funny scene right at the end of the chapter, within the final few lines, where Anakin thinks Halagad is going to show him his severed ear, but no, it's his Padawan braid. And it goes right back to Halagad and Anakin's hilarious banter. They really are funny together. I think they're some of my favourite character pairings of Star Wars. But we pretty much end it off with them all being ready to go and attack Zeta Magnus. But we're going to have an interludium, which I'm going to read in just a little bit. So stay around for that. So should be releasing later today. If I end up reading it today, hopefully I will. That's what I'm intending to, but we'll see. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye. Hello everyone. I have just finished reading the interludium of Skywalkers. It's just been 14 minutes since the video came out for chapter 2, and I've literally just finished reading it. So that should give you an idea of something at the moment. Anyway, here is a sketch I did for Zeta Magnus at the end of chapter 1. So I'll say sketch drawing, but anyway, this is a bit of more of a monologue thing for this quote unquote chapter. I'm just going to call it chapter, from Zeta Magnus, and we get to learn that he was created by the Arcanians, and he was spliced together from multiple genetics, and that he eventually, there was a war that went on with many of his brothers, and they were eventually all killed, and he was the only one that survived. He was the first one, and as he says, he's the last one. and anyway, he goes. You can consume basically anything, and he's trying to search for that something that's nameless, and he believes he's found it by the end of this interludium. He believes he's found it, and he's looking for eternal life. He's looking for immortality. But we also learn he has advanced intelligence as well. And I'm just completely lost my mind then. He's talking about how he wants to try and clone to get that immortality, but as it turns out, he's not too keen on the idea. He doesn't see it as being immortality, even if he was able to bring his memories and such into that person, into that clone. Anyway, he's struck a deal with Palpatine for helping the Separatists with different viruses to in exchange for being given the secrets to immortality. And should Sidious fail to give him that, then he's going to find a way to get to him and get him. But yeah, again, not a lot to this chapter. So yeah, thank you all for watching. Goodbye. So hello everyone, I've just finished, chapter 3 and the postludium of Skywalkers, a Clone Wars story. So I'm finished with the book now, and I was right, it was 3 chapters, the preludium, interludium and postludium. So so there's a lot to cover in chapter 3, there is a lot that happens, there's no shortage of what to talk about here. So let's just get straight into it. We start off with a bit of description that the battle has started against Zeta Magnus, and we get to see Anakin, Halagad, Obi-Wan and Tark's squad climbing the mountain, and they get attacked by some zombified Outlanders. And we also get to learn how Anakin got his scar. Now I was actually surprised to see this, because I was under the impression that Anakin got the scar from Ventress, and Ventress even gets a mention just after Anakin gets the scar, so I do think that's maybe a bit of a cheeky nod to that. But I was under that impression, so I may have to do some research into whether that was in canon or whether it was Legends. I'm fairly sure it was Legends though, and this book is only Legends, so that gives... So poor Anakin, he's had the same scar twice. And then there was also the George Lucas explanation that he got the scar from slipping in the bathtub. But anyway, they eventually get into the fortress for Zeta's fortress, and they eventually see Blutarch, who is in this story a tactical droid. If you don't know who Blutarch is, the thing is with Zeta Magnus, he was based on Arthur Prime. He draws a lot from Arthur Prime, and Arthur Prime had a droid called Blue 4, and Tark is a Theresian for 4, I'm fairly sure. It's some other language for 4 in Star Wars. So Blutarch is Blue 4. But Blutarch had a very different appearance. Then she was a tactical droid in this, and now in canon she has a completely different appearance. So she's had a lot of different appearances, poor Blutarch. But anyway, she lures the Jedi into a throne room, and we find out that Tark's squad are actually allied with Zeta Magnus. And it actually gave us a bit of a shock. And anyway, we get a bit of a scene with Zeta Magnus, and he reveals, and he kind of talks about a bunch of different stuff. I can't remember specifically. but but it turns out he was the one that caused the tragedy on Okonomo, which is often brought up in the book for what's his name, Halagad, and we find out he was the cause for that tragedy, and he really gets Halagad upset, and we see him almost kill Halagad, but eventually he's able to free himself and chases after Plutarch and Satyr, while Satyr and Plutarch make an escape. But in this scene as well, we also get to learn that Zeta Magnus has started to clone Anakin and Obi-Wan, and that was also another bit of a shock. And he's extracting their memories to put in the clones. Now, the Tark squad do fire on Obi-Wan and Anakin, who are still in the room, and they have to defend themselves, again from the Class C stuff. And we also get to see a scene where Halagad, his name keeps slipping my mind, is chasing Zeta, and we get to see that he's really filled with fury now. He really is. And we get to see just how durable Zeta is. He gets impaled in the back by a grapple hook thing, and he just pulls it out as if it's nothing, and just eats it. And we really do get to see how utterly insane Zeta is. He is literally a madman. As Halagad tries to ask him, why did you do the Okonomo stuff, and he says something along the lines of, because I am Zeta Magnus. But here it is. Hang on. Halagad says, why did you do it? And you have Zeta, and he says, and it's in capital letters in the book, it's actually really large letters as well, and he says, because, young vermin, I am Zeta Magnus, and he just laughs and laughs and laughs like a maniac. We really get to see how Zeta is just a complete madman. Anyway, we cut to Obi-Wan and Anakin, who are fighting off Tark's squad, who have actually put up quite a bit of a fight for the Jedi. But they do eventually defeat them after some trouble. And as it turns out, Halagad kills, I'm going to put that in quotes, kills Zeta Magnus. And he also got rid of Captain Nilo, who was leading Tark's squad. And we get to see he was really, really wounded from the fight. And anyway, we then get to learn a little bit more about Obi-Wan and learn how he generally tried to he generally just didn't like thinking of the clones as Django. He didn't want to think too much about it, because we get a little bit of insight to that. We also get to learn that the fight between what happens in that fight between Halagad and what's his name, Zeta Magnus. It keeps slipping my mind now. I think I've gotten sick, so that's why I was also seeming a little bit worn out, a little bit unresponsive in the interluding review. So I apologise for that. But we learn that Zeta Magnus has a bit of a munch on Halagad, and took out quite a few chunks from his arm, but bit off his fingers. Poor Halagad. He's already lost his ear. But we find out he ended up cutting Zeta in half. And they believe Magnus to be dead. And when Anakin says to everyone he wants to train Carries because he senses she's still alive, she was able to buy the Jedi time to fight, because they were about to be eliminated, I'm fairly sure, if I'm remembering correctly, and she appears at the window and saved them. But by drawing Dark Squad and what's her name? Blue Dark's attention. But anyway, he senses that Carries is alive, or Carries. Sorry. There we go. And he says to Obi-Wan, I want to train her as a Jedi. And Obi-Wan is hesitant, saying that she's too old. And eventually it spurs up a fight between Anakin and Halagad, who are really going at each other. This isn't their cheeky banter this is their cheeky, offensive, but friendly banter from earlier. They're really going at each other. And Anakin gets very close to killing Halagad. Halagad's really not had a good time. I find it a little bit funny that Halagad's getting all this, because his design is based off the author for this story. So I do find it funny that the author is pretty much giving himself all this flack, which I do find that somewhat funny. Halagad's not had a good time, but eventually Obi-Wan reprimands Anakin, and he's very disappointed with him. And we get to see Carries come over to him, and she says that she needed to come back and save them because they tried to save her father. And Anakin promises that at the end of the war he'll come back to train her as a Jedi. And it is a bit of a I'm not quite sure what the word is, sweet but morbid, I guess, because we know what ends up happening. We know he doesn't come back. We know that he becomes Darth Vader. I know they meet again at some point, because this is meant to be a prequel to a story back in the 70s. And so I know they meet again, and Wikipedia even lists Carries as being the apprentice to Vader, but I'm not entirely sure how accurate that is. I'll have to read the comic myself. But anyway, we get to see that childlike excitement from Carries again, and she flies off, and also gives Anakin a quick kiss before going as well. And Anakin heads for the ship, and then we get probably this last bit of the book is just filled with twist after twist after twist, because in the postludium it's revealed that the Zeta Magnus throughout the story, Zeta Magnus in chapter 3 at least, was actually a clone of the actual Zeta Magnus, and that the real Zeta Magnus is safe in the Dark Worlds. And Blue Tark informs him that the drones and the decoy have all failed and been slain. You also get to and we also get to see a little bit of his Sun Guard, which again they really like putting in Sun Guard in this story. But we see them mention the Sun Guard we see the sun god in there, I mean, and he quotes someone, and Zeta talks about how time is a tyrant before which all are humbled, and he asks for his drum hella harp, and the sun guards mercenary gives it off to what's his name again, Zeta, and we get a really I guess chilling ending to the book. Let me see if I can read it off for a moment. Let me get it up. Here it is. And as monstrous fingers plucked the strings of that marvellous instrument, the mellifluous sound such as was meant but only for the ears of the space gods filled the chamber, carrying across by alien science to all the worlds of this barbaric kingdom, and broadcast into the known galaxy for all her citizens, in every home, in every workplace, and in every plaza, in every eatery and establishment, and every starship, and in every vehicle, to relish, and in that storm of melodical rapture, Sirius Torn reflected wistfully, never send a clone to do the proper job of a... that's going to be a tough word to read. Anthropophagy, or something like that, or anthropophagites. Let's just say cannibal, because that's what it is, a cannibal. Never sent a clone to do the proper job of a cannibal. And as the first promised Republic planet died, drowning in plagues, the monster played. And that's how the book ends, which I find to be quite a chilling thing. I enjoyed the book, I really did, and this is the end of the book, so I enjoyed it. I enjoyed this book. I'm going to give some passing thoughts here. I forgot to mention for chapter 2, I really got excited at the Sith lore that was mentioned by Halagad to Anakin. They have a conversation talking about Zeta Magnus's many aliases, and how one of them was... hang on, let me get his page up real quick, Zeta Magnus. One of his identities was Saturna the Garu, and Garu was a Sith Lord of old, and this also promotes Halagad to think, well, could this be the second Sith Lord? And he also mentions Magnus is an old Sith title for self-proclaimed Sith leaders, and that got me especially excited. I hadn't heard of Garu before, but I got excited at hearing Magnus, because Darth Malak from Knights of the Old Republic holds the title of Sith Magnus during KOTOR, and so we also get to learn what that means in this book. We also get to learn what that means in this book, which is self-proclaimed leader, and it's quite interesting. So yeah, that got me quite excited to read Magnus, and it was, oh, of course, Magnus, Sith Magnus. Why didn't that click with me? So I was quite happy to recognise that. For any criticisms, again, this book can either be the same problems with Darth Plagueis dialed up to the maximum, or dialed down with an extra problem, and it is the complex wording. It's not as common in this book, I don't think. It does still feature quite heavily, but it's not as common. But there are times where it's in heavy abundance, where it's like where it's like 2/3 of the sentence are made up of those words, and it's, what are you trying to say? And it's more annoying when you can just say the thing in a much simpler way, without having me trying to Google up what you're trying to say. But oh well. And another problem was at times, and I think you heard it. when I was reading off that ending bit there. The grammar of the book can be a bit off, and it does go a bit, what you're trying to say? And it can be a bit confusing at times. Like, as I was just reading off, the mercenary willfully did as he was ordered, and as monstrous fingers plucked the strings of that marvellous instrument, a mellifluous sound such as was meant but only for the ears of the space gods filled the chamber, which is without that punctuation, because there's no punctuation in there's no commas or stuff, or additional words to make it smoother, so you can't just so it's a very bumpy thing you have to figure out, and it's but maybe it's just how I'm reading it, but I do know there are other parts in the book where it feels like they're missing words in the sentence, and it's what are you trying to say? So that is another problem I have with it. Luckily, those bad grammar moments are few and far between. And there are also other moments in the book where he uses alternative spellings for words, and it's a bit, because you're trying to look for that spelling of the words, not what the actual spelling of the word is, and I found myself having to search it up quite a bit. So that is again another problem I found, but I generally, aside from all of that, I personally enjoyed the book. I would suggest it. I think the author, what's his name again? I think it's something like Abel G. Penner. Was that it? Hold on. Yeah, Abel G. Penner. Hopefully I pronounced that right. I'm fairly sure in one of the quotes he talked about how this was kind of like a bit of a celebration of the continuity and was really bringing together lots of different things and bringing it all together into one, kind of bringing a lot of stuff together from all over the lore. And you can really see that in the story with like the Sith Magnus, the Thoricians, the Arcanian Dominion, the Sky, for example. That's a really old piece of Star Wars lore, the Sky Trees. He was really going all out when it came to the Star Wars lore in this. So, yeah. I do think I prefer Arthur Prime just a bit more than Zeta Magnus. I think I personally really liked Arthur Prime in the Jedi Knights comics. I think he came across as a very good character in that. Whereas Zeta Magnus, I'm not personally too big of a fan of, which is funny because they're literally the same character, just with different names. But I prefer having Arthur Prime's origins ambiguous. And I prefer him being more fearless like he was in the Jedi Knights comic. Like, he literally engages a fight with Yoda. It is him who starts the fight. Yoda has his weapon already ignited to try and subdue Arthur, but he's the one that starts the fight. And I kind of prefer Arthur Prime's character over Zeta Magnus, who is a bit of a madman, and he's a bit and he's cowardly. He only really resorts to fighting as a last resort. I personally prefer Arthur Prime's character over Zeta Magnus. And I am really going, and because I want to consider both Arthur and Zeta canon, I'm really going to have to figure out a headcanon. I've been trying to do it for multiple days now. Now that I've read the book and I've got all the details, I can hopefully work on that properly. Especially because some of the ideas I had just fall apart after you understand what Zeta Magnus' character is from the book. So, yeah. I personally enjoy the book. As I said, I would recommend it. It is somewhat short. It is only a novella, so it is a short novel. As Google likes to say, a long short story. It's got the Preludium, Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Interludium, Chapter 3 and Postludium. Chapter 3 is by far the longest. It's literally taken me about 6 hours to go through. I'm not joking. 5 hours. So, or 7 or 8 hours. It's taken me a long time to go through. But for me, I think that's just because it's the pace I read at, and also having to do all the googling and stuff, which I did. I had to do a lot. So yeah, I would suggest it if you can find it. And yeah, again, I still think I prefer Arthur Prime and his version of and his lore. But Zeta Magnus is good. I enjoyed Zeta. So, thank you all for watching, and for the last time in this series, I may be doing a full book review though, so maybe not the last time, but for at least Skywalkers individual chapter readings, thank you all for watching, goodbye.